Okay, guys, I show 1 o'clock, and I figure like last time we'll have a lot of people joining us in the moment. Just a few pieces up front. We welcome you all. This is our second piece in a series. We're not sure how long our series will run, are we, Dawn and Ray? But we're going to do it as long as there's a need for it. So we welcome you to part 2 of Diagnosing the Digital Divide. We want to let you know that this is going to be recorded, so just be mindful of that. And we'll have a moderator. We'll go over that in just a minute. So my name is Melody Morgan, and I want to thank each of you for joining us today. And with me today is Dawn Benton, Assistant Commissioner of Research and Technology at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and several additional great technology leaders from both of our organizations, and most importantly, from across the state. APSRC and DESE have partnered to bring together great technology leaders from across our state to share information, innovative practices, and strategies that address digital learning gaps and ensure equitable learning opportunities with technology. We hope today's session on diagnosing the digital divide will lead to deeper and richer discussions and solutions on a regular occurring basis, and ultimately improve learning opportunities and outcomes. So having said that, I just want to kind of go over today's format with you. It's a little bit different than our last session that we did. We had a wonderful panel, and we want to thank them again for everything they contributed to our kickoff of this series. Again, I said it's Dawn and myself. We also have Ray Girdler from the department, Kendall Wells, Gina, and Trent from APSRC. And just so you know, our format today is going to be like a living chat with a moderator. And Trent is going to be in and out. He's doing multiple things today, but he's going to be moderating our chat box as well as the rest of us. We want to encourage you to share your questions and comments and any discussion that you have during the presentation, and we will enable your mic. Trent, are we currently unmiked, everybody?
They should have permissions to go ahead and unmute themselves.
Okay, so this is for your benefit. So we want to encourage y'all to let us know when you want to engage. We're all open with that, aren't we, Dawn and Ray, about pausing and talking about the issue at the moment. So before we dig into those topics, I thought I'd give a little bit of a focus this morning by sharing something that was shared with our state board, I think back in February. Dr. Sarah McKenzie was asked to partner with the department and do a survey for family engagement. But ironically, it has a lot to do, this survey does, with remote and online learning. And it captures this feedback directly from the field, from one of our most valuable stakeholders, which is our parents from across the state. Just to put it in perspective, the sample represents about 6%, they believe, of parents and guardians of K-12 students in Arkansas. It was close to 18,000 parents, unique parents responses that they captured, representing a little over 30,000 students. So that means multiple students in a household sometimes. But the big part of this is grouped by instructional setting. And it helps our thinking as we go into the topics, as you see over on the right today. We're going to have some great discussion with all of your help on social media platforms, equal versus equitable, and vendor management. And I've put a link over there to the full survey from Office of Ed Policy if you're interested in reading it, because it is an extensive, exhaustive survey. And this is just one component of that survey. But I know when we were planning our session today that we thought that this had a lot of relevance in helping us look at the perceptions or the facts or the realities of what a great number of parent stakeholders feel like this past year so far has encompassed. For example, the big blue lines on each of these different instructional settings represents parents' perceptions of whether or not laptops or tablets were provided for students to take home during this year. But notice all of the other bar graphs in each one of these instructional settings is quite a bit smaller than the device representation piece. And just to help you see, the different instructional settings that were captured in that survey was, here, this second group represents students who only attended in person on the school campus. And then the third group represents, maybe this is a perception of people that were only engaged remotely or online. And then the fourth group is kind of like a hybrid. It's part-time in person on campus, but then there were some virtual days for instruction possibly done remotely or online, and then something totally different out here. And again, this is based upon how the parent understands those different instructional settings. But Dawn, I'm going to front load and ask you to help me facilitate this discussion a little bit. Notice the big one to me was we have done, it looks like a really good job when you look at the percentages of the people surveyed and making sure we provided devices and put devices in the hands of students when they're at home or at school. Would you agree with that?
And so when you're thinking about this and you're thinking about it through this lens, let's think about what our parents' perceptions are, not maybe reality. So this is what parent perceptions are. And it may be based on some criteria or some factors that we may not be aware of as school professionals. And as Mel pointed out, we see the numbers are pretty high that parents, they see that's a tangible device, a laptop or a tablet, but they may not know about some of the other things that are available or provided by your school, whether it be lack of communication or just students not knowing, parents not knowing, or availability as well. So when we're thinking, and Mel and I do, we want this to be interactive. So if you see some things or want to question some things, put it in the text box. I see where we're getting a couple of responses over there, and or just unmute your mic and say, speak up, because we want this to be more interactive. Our last session was a little bit more one directional, where we had panelists delivering really wonderful discussion points to see you guys speak up. So if you're looking at this, and Mel, I think it's great that we brought this piece in here, because this is by the Office for Educational Policy. So it's a legitimate research-based survey. We want to see, is what's really going on in some of your schools? Are these really some things, if as you look down through the bar graph and see elements where you're thinking, well, all the people at my school know about this, or all the people in my school has a device and or connectivity, and we have support. But if your school doesn't know that you have a call-in line for IT support, or if your parents don't know that you have a hotline to call, then their perception is that there's no one to call, and they're just sitting there with a broken laptop or a device that doesn't knowing how to log in to the software or LMS or CMS you guys have. So think about this, and if you want to type it in over there, that's fine. If you want to make a response out loud, that's fine. So we're going to play, Mel, let's play middle school teacher for a little bit, and let's pause quietly until someone either speaks up or puts something over there.
Heck, I'll do it. I'm here, so I'd jump in here.
I knew Madlock would jump in.
David's in there thinking, oh, great, Madlock's going to put something there. No, I agree. We had a board meeting last night, and one of the comments on Facebook was, we were talking about teacher pay. We were talking about this increase. And one of the parents said, are the teachers going to be up teaching? Perception is such a key word in everything that's going on. They think because we're online and things that teachers aren't teaching. And I think every school district, we can all say that our teachers are kind of getting a bad rap here, because they're teaching 24/7, which they didn't used to do. They're taking phone calls and emails in the middle of the night. We're doing that. Perception is a real big deal. And I think that we're trying to talk about our social media push. Right now, we put out information. That's what we all do. We're just throwing information. What our kids want and what our parents want are to be happy. And I think that's something we need to look at, is to show the joy in education that we're having with hybrid learning, online learning, and learning as we move forward, so that our parents understand that although the landscape has changed, we're still a happy place. We're still making having happy educators and happy learners. I just want to throw that out there. But Don, you're right. Perception is a big deal. And that's one of our key words we always think is that no matter what we think we're doing internally, we really got to find out what those parents and students in the community are thinking. So there's my 2 cents, and I'd be that loudmouth first row junior high kid to do that.
Mel, I know we'd get someone. I knew it.
Jeff, I agree with you. And I don't think it's fair to anyone this year that there was not any airstrip to take off and plan. They were actually in the middle of everything, trying to implement and write a plan many times at the same time. And so tribute to great teaching all year long. I just wanted to share with you guys, though, in the minds of parents that are being surveyed across our state, they believe, because they see the device, they know there's a device that's with their child in that setting, but they're showing in their surveyed responses that there's some disconnects. And a lot of it, like look at the bright red one. Can y'all see my cursor? This is connectivity right here. And so like if the only way they can reach out for help is with a ticket system and they don't have connectivity on that device, that's going to be a disconnect for them. And if the IT support is available, but they haven't heard about it, like Don said, if we haven't done a really good campaign of assuming that they will find and know how to reach out for help, if everything has to go through a teacher in order to get fixed or to be addressed, I think that's kind of how that's what I'm hearing from a few parents that I visit with. A lot of times, I mean, we're just like you guys on a different level. If they don't know how to reach us, if there's a bottleneck in the communications that's going out, like we do weekly collaboratives for teachers. And it wasn't until we did a survey that I realized some of them didn't know that. I mean, that is true. Some of them did not know that we were doing something every week to try to help engage and take that great work that we've handed them back in August forward. And so sometimes it's an aha moment, but I just kind of felt like this information is available. It might also help you think through if you're still trying to do some kind of a needs assessment, so how to kind of frame your thinking about some of the questions that you may want to ask in your own district or in your own school setting to determine what are my needs. And sometimes, you know, they're not the reality of your needs, but it's the perception. The perception itself will paint you a picture of maybe something as simple as communication.
I wish.
Go ahead.
I was saying, I wish, you know, since I look at this data, I wonder, because I'm kind of a data nerd, like what, I think the data that's not here tells us the story too. Like what questions did they not ask? Like there's like, I wonder, one of my big questions is, man, I wish I had the COVID numbers on this. I wish I had the pre-COVID numbers and all these things, just so people could see what a mass taking our schools went under. Like, I don't know, like even the hotspots, even at connectivity, I might look at 30% and think that's low. If it went from, you know, I don't know. I wish I could have seen the same. I know that's kind of like hypothetical, but I'm super curious of what these numbers would have looked like a year ago.
I think you're spot on, Ray. I was going to say, you know, you're right, because we did so much, you know, to get to this point. And it's kind of like we all kind of realized we probably need to pull back a little ways and, you know, and fix some of that to where it's a little bit better. But you're right, it would be great to have those numbers to see how much we did do and what do we need to do to go backwards to get it a little more solid. I agree with that.
Another aha moment for me when I was looking at this data, this is not just an IT problem. This is not the problem for the group of people that are on this call. This is a systemic issue, or these are systemic questions and communications that need to be done with a collaborative team approach, which is one of the reasons I reinforce with school leaders that the importance of involving the IT department in all the big decisions they make, whether it be with connections or laptops or troubleshooting, all those components. And I think there's kind of that big connect where you guys have all dealt with this, where if it turns on or switches on or plugs into the wall, it all of a sudden becomes an inherent problem for the IT staff, whether it be communicating, whether it be troubleshooting or whatever. But there's a bigger problem that we discovered early on when COVID, when we started coming back to school in August, and we were getting all of our COVID plans and all of our online learning plans going on, we opened a hotline. And I'll be honest with you, in the beginning, when we opened that hotline, we thought, holy cow, have opened Pandora's box. We should not have done this. However, after we started really seeing what was going on, we noticed this huge trend, and it was just pure and simple. One of the simplest things we can do, and it's lack of communication. We had a very big gap in communication. Most of the parents who were calling into the hotline and complaining or having really major problems was just, they didn't have any, they weren't communicated with, or they didn't even know who to contact. And we would sometimes direct them to the school's website, and we would find there was nothing for them to get them any further. So sometimes, you know, the big problems that look huge and almost insurmountable can be taken care of with just some simple communication. And if you think about your relationship with your significant other, sometimes if you would just talk, you didn't really have a big problem to start with. You just needed to talk. So that's one of the biggest things we've learned through this whole process, is that, yeah, we have this perception that you're not doing this, but the bigger problem is that the communication lines are broken, which creates that perception. And so as we start in and you start looking in, what can we do better next year for our schools? What can we improve? Well, I can tell you right now, you can put everything on Facebook, email, worksheets, handouts, commercials, radio, and you're going to communicate enough. It's just, you got to keep doing it. You got to keep on going. You got to keep going at figuring out that extra way to reach that parent or that student who's so far removed, so they can know that you do have the resources for them to continue education, have a wonderful learning opportunity.
I think if you don't mind me jumping in, Don, you are spot on. In fact, I just had a conversation a little bit ago with somebody else along similar lines. And, you know, McDonald's has been around for how long? And yet you still hear McDonald's commercials. In fact, when I said that, some of you probably played the jingle in your head. You have to keep the communication going. You've got to keep that information always on the forefront, always at the front. I think one of the things, and I'm not sure, of course, I realize this was sent to parents about what's going on at the schools, but one of the things that I heard not long ago was actually from a teacher. And so it makes me think, you know, we not only have to cover getting this information out and communicating what's happening with parents, but also with the teachers. This teacher was very excited about finally, you know, the potential for having the mask thing lifted and being able to get all of the kids back in school, because in this particular teacher's words, they can finally teach their kids. And by that, what they meant was that they did not view the virtual students as their own students. So to me, that's you know, you're talking about those systemic issues, those systemic, I don't call them problems, but places of opportunities to grow and to communicate. That one just, I don't know, it really stuck out to me. And I didn't want to let this particular, I know that may be beyond kind of the scope, but I didn't want this to get by without saying there are some teachers out there who also need to understand what's going on.
Guys, one thing that we hear when parents reach us is they want so bad in their role as a parent or guardian to support their child, but they don't know what to do. And so part of, I would think, if I were back in my school setting, in the situation that I would be in, I would be wondering, is there something I can do to help grow the capacity of the parents who may choose a digital option next year for their child, so that I can actually build that capacity and support for when I'm not with that child, when that child's not engaging synchronously with me online, or when they're not part of my classroom on site. And I think that's a big one. The parents are so frustrated because they don't know what to do, and they don't know the first step. They don't know the first baby step to take. Many of them want to help. And when we start working with them, light bulbs just go off. And when I see that, I feel like they're hungry. If we can possibly figure out how to pump out some training, if that complements your digital plan in your district next year or your school, and you plan to have some type of a digital plan offering for those situations, I think it would be real important to be thinking about training. That's this charcoal brown group right here of how you might extend that support beyond the classroom or beyond the building into whoever that person is providing support for, oftentimes little kids in a home setting.
Melody, this is Margie from Jasper, and we found all of this same problem in our district, and because of how we're spread out in 3 counties, it was an extreme problem. So our district decided they hired a person that deals with all of our digital learning kids, and the person has to meet with them and talk with them every week. And if they have problems, then that person is the intake person for their devices or whatever. Then they contact our technology department if they need help. That is for the devices they're using. That's for their hotspots and everything. And so that is how we have, as a district, have combated that problem. I don't know how many other districts in Arkansas actually hired a person to do that job, but that's how this district decided to handle it.
I think that's great. You know, Margie, this one phone call I took not long ago was this parent was at the breaking point, and all it was a pop-up blocker. I mean, that sounds simple to me, but as they described, and I go, look up at the end of this bar, you know, I drive them in their mind. I'm trying to tell someone how to get through the forest, and I can't really see what I'm telling them, but I go, is there perhaps this? And sure enough, it was something that simple. So they really didn't have a broken device.
They just had a simple problem.
It is a problem because it interferes with success that day in learning, but sometimes it's the ability to understand and troubleshoot the way we take for granted and the way most teenagers can actually show me today on any given day. And just being able to grow our parents' capacity to support this. And so, yeah, we've got a couple of chat questions. And one of them is this still going to be an issue come next school year? And I'll let Don share what he thinks about that. I think there will be some form and fashion, as the next person answered, there will definitely be a change to what learning looks like, I think, going forward. And I do think there'll be a capacity, and that's why the department's asking districts to think about what a digital plan would look like. Don, you want to tag with?
Yeah, I do, but I want to cover something that you made me think about, Mel, and I see a couple of my colleagues on here that I worked with in Hot Springs School District. One thing that we used to always try to be mindful about was what seems like a simple problem to us as IT people who live and breathe this every day does seem like an insurmountable problem for someone who's not as well versed in the technology world as we are. And I remember telling Ken and Bryce and Joey and Greg and all those guys, and I would say, man, you know, that might not seem like a big deal to you, but for that teacher who has 25 or 30 kids per class period, and they're trying to do all these other things and juggle cats, and the fact that their computer doesn't come on and it seemed like a simple problem to you is not a simple problem to them because they're in the trenches. I wanted to make sure we realize, and let's remember, we get very complacent at times, and I am super guilty of this. And I say, well, did you just unplug it and replug it? And then I walk off and I'm like, oh, that dodo bird, they should have known better than that. And I'm thinking, she had 30 kids in her classroom running, bouncing off the walls because her lesson wasn't working right. I need to be a little bit more kind and give a little bit more grace, because that same thing happened to me not soon afterwards. And I thought, oh yeah, here's you some humble pie, buddy. So when we're thinking about the simple problems that seem that way to us, let's always be mindful they're not simple to them. And let's remember that. Let's always keep that. It's about customer service for us in so many cases. And the customers are our students and our teachers and our administrators. And we've got to support them and give them the tools so they can do their job better, even if it means we have to swallow our pride a little bit and think, well, you should have done this. Well, they didn't know. If they'd known, they would have done that. And man, I beat myself up a lot for being impatient with people on that. The other question, the bigger question that Adam asked, that's still going to be an issue come next school year. We hope that it won't be as difficult or big an issue. There are still going to be some issue with some COVID related situations and or something else. We don't know what the pandemic's going to do from day to day. We don't know if it's going to again and cause us to maybe have to pivot and do some things. So that's why we wanted to help the schools get better prepared for next year. Some schools have said, that's it. We're not doing any more online, full-time online learning. We're going face-to-face, and we'll deal with the isolated instances or cases on a case-by-case basis. Instead of doing just across the board, everyone can have an option. We're going to only use that as a tool for those kids who may have much more significant health issues, or teachers who have much health issues, or just isolated situations where we might have a little bit of a spread in the classroom. We're going to focus that on a case-by-case basis. And then some schools really had a lot of success this year. They had the tools and the mechanisms and the resources and the training in place where they had a lot more positive results. Now, are they where we want them to be? Probably not. But they were just much more well-equipped as a one-to-one school with all the connectivity. I mean, if you live in certain cities, connectivity is just how much you want to pay. Well, you live in some other cities, there's no matter how much you want to pay, there's no connectivity. So the problems are different, the situations are different. And as I tell folks, when they ask me, should we do this? I always use two words, it depends. What is your situation? What are your resources? What resources do you lack? So as you're working and meandering through that, think about, what do I have available? Can we do basically a needs assessment? We're talking about needs. Then do I have the capacity? Do I have the training pieces in place? And then do I have all these elements that make this happen and can make it happen well? So long answer to your question, Adam. I think there's going to be a variation of this in different schools depending on what they have available. It's going to depend on their co-ops and the resources they have at their educational service co-ops, and just plain and simple, the culture that you have. The culture that we're trying to incorporate in Arkansas is that we're going to have school. We're going to have school whether we have a pandemic or not. Others still haven't even gone back to school. They got kids sitting at home. We didn't do that. Even though it was hard and we caught a lot of grief for it. I'll say this, my 12-year-old daughter is a much happier person today because she went back to school in August than she would have been had we been trying to juggle the schedule and figure it out, and mom stay home 1 week, dad at home, grandma 1 week. It was much better for us to get her back in school. And yeah, she quarantined for 14 days at one time. We dealt with it, but she wanted to be at school and she needed to be at school, not because of math and reading and all these other things. She needed to be in school for all the social and emotional needs that kids deal with today. They need to be around other people. So we're having school this fall. We're having it. We're going to be doing different variations of school, not like we did 2 years ago, but it's going to be combinations of what we've learned through this year. So we got a lot more to learn, a lot more mistakes to make, but yes, we're going to still have some issues in the fall, without a doubt.
And guys, we talked about a little bit last month. I guess it's hard to say last month, isn't it? But last month, that a lot of vendors are helping us think about options. They're asking schools, they know where resources are flowing, and they're very, very happy to offer solutions. And that's where we're wanting y'all to help possibly with your leadership, is to be thinking through whether or not that's a solution or something else to layer on that needs to be managed. I will tell you, I'm hearing some really great things from several schools who can see the benefit of having a digital opportunity next year. Here's a good example of one. There is a fear when measures come in, and I say measures from the point of, student achievement measures, that there could be a greater gap in learning this year due to the pandemic. I mean, that's a theory that we probably all can agree on might happen to a child or more than one child. But given that, there's probably not enough teachers that we really would like to have to be, or time in our day to be able to address that learning loss in our systems. So some of them are actually thinking through ways that they might scale and use the digital tools to offer wraparound supports to address prior learning that didn't happen quite the way they wanted it. They're wanting to to polish their skills as a teacher and managing some of that content and delivery, where they may need to sit with some face-to-face, but they might have others working in an LMS system that are working on skills that they missed last year for whatever reason. So just a lot to think about. We had a great segue. Don, if you're okay, I'm going to take us on into the next slide.
Yeah, and I'll talk about a little bit more of that lost learning piece when we talk about some of the ESSER components as I present later. So we're going to jump into social media.
So I think I'm handing off to Ray right now to talk to you about social media platforms, right?
Yeah. So Adam, I think the one guy speaks up and everybody throws his name around 20 times, but I think one of the things that you stayed on, I think, David and Jeff hit on a point, and I think there are some things here to stay. And I think one example of that is all those devices y'all bought or still waiting to come in, that that you just saw, when even though digital learning may not be 100% of what y'all do or what you all provide, you still have all those devices, and there's still going to be the expectation that they are used and that they get used. And I think what's really interesting about that graph that we just saw is, to me, it's actually not that. I think one of the first shifts we saw, like technology explosions and internet and devices, was when we went to online testing. This, I think, is probably that times 10 or 20. And now, when all those devices hit the classroom, there's this big push, like, now that testing's over, well, how are you using these Chromebooks in the classroom? They're like, oh my gosh, I got to use these for instruction. So now you're almost one-to-one. And I think the same question is out there, but it's a little bit different. And that's like, how do we use all these devices, not just in the classroom, but how do we use all these devices in the home? And if you think about that last screen, I think the biggest perception for parents was the device that was coming home. And I think the lowest perception, and it was parent training. And I think some of that is like how parents define training. Are they expecting like a formal presentation where they have to sign up and attend? I hear my wife's a teacher, and she's doing all kinds of tech support. And I was like, does that count as training when she's doing step-by-step instructions on how to help grandma? I think that is, and so I think there's a lot that may not be captured when people say a formal word like training or support. But I would acknowledge that there's probably a gap between the devices that are being sent out and the education that they're being provided on how to use those. And now I don't mean that as a critique. I think it's just like the environment that just exploded. And I don't know if y'all saw this recently. There's a link there, and Trent might pop it. I don't know that we have time to watch it, but there was a story when he posted, and you see these every now and then. It's just timely that it hit. And it was about a girl who was caught in Lonoke. She was from another state, where she was baited by an online predator. And they candidly in the video talk about this all happened on her school issued device. And it was kind of catty if you work in that, but it's also reality that we're sending connectivity home and devices home. And a lot of those parents are facing a new reality that they may not be aware of. And it may seem simple to us, like we live in it. I think Dawn said that earlier, like we live in it. But for some people, if it's their first full-time device at home, there are some things that parents may not know. I mean, it sounds silly, like keep the Chromebook in an open room in the house, but those are important things to parents or grandparents. I don't know if y'all have seen this, but I see a lot of grandparents watching their kids at home when they're supposed to be learning, or even parents. I mean, I didn't grow up with this stuff. Whenever I started teaching, a BlackBerry was still cool, and so you didn't have like full-time internet. And I still get dogged on for being too young sometimes. And so there's parents who didn't grow up with this stuff too. And I think there's a lot of things that we common knowledge since we always work with kids. I feel like there's more dangers out there than what we might, because that's our everyday, that parents may not realize when we gave them that device, like, oh, by the way, you should do check X, Y, and Z. So I don't know if y'all have seen this, but I wanted to put something out there about supports. And I'm kind of curious what you guys do to prepare parents, those of you who kind of either have been in it But we do have some resources out there. You can visit www.smacktalk.info. And we call it Smack Talk, their social media awareness campaign. It's kind of catchy. We're just talking like we want everybody talking smack with their kids. Yeah, thank you, Melody. But we put resources out there for parents, and we put some games and stuff out there for kids. And we have some stuff out there for teachers as well. You can catch our podcast because the teachers are doing a lot of the tech support as far as their Google Classroom. Like they are, a lot of them are the first call supporter, and some of y'all have. I knew there were some out there, Margie, but I thought it was super encouraging that you guys had a point person. Because in my house, what we were experiencing was very different. My wife was the point person for everybody in her digital classroom. You know what I mean? And so the Chromebook Tech Support 1 was her, and she was also the teacher. And it was I know everybody was, but it was a new role for her. And luckily she's pretty tech savvy. But at the same time, I just thought it was, I don't know that I realized when we first started this Smack Talk campaign, like how relevant it would be to this conversation, and trying to help kids be safe online at home. And I know that the parent piece is a big piece, and I wanted to put those resources out there. I know a lot of schools will do, student education. But I think parent education is a big piece of that. Like, so how do you reach them? And I want to put that out there as something that you could use or something that you could share. And I think Dawn hit on something earlier, like it's a shared role. I don't mean this to be like a tech responsibility. I think the media specialists, how do you work with them? I think some districts do better than others. Quite frankly, I think elementary schools probably do it a little bit better than high schools. And I think sometimes the risk is a little bit higher and high. So one, I wanted to share that too. I was kind of curious to know from you guys, what were y'all seeing? And I'm curious to know what you might be using. I mean, it may seem basic to you, but chances are somebody's not doing it. There's the hotspot filtering. I'm kind of curious to know, like, what's your strategy on that? What I know, Don and our team, where we do a lot of the learning plans. We're reviewing a lot of those tech plans, and one of the things that we're looking for is like, how are you monitoring devices? So I'm really curious to know, like, how do you monitor devices or student activity while they're at home? What are your strategies? What are you using that might be beneficial to others, and what you might be doing to parents to shrink that gap, or what do you think you might be or plan to do? I don't know, just kind of wanted to start that conversation because I think it's clearly a need out there that we're all trying to meet.
I put something out there. One of the things that we're going to do that we quickly saw that it might help the phone ring less is making sure that we do plan for offering some level of support to whoever the person is in the home. Sometimes it's a big brother or sister. Sometimes it's an aunt and uncle. Sometimes it's a babysitter that's actually involved in supporting that learning. It's whoever calls, we're going to try to help. But one of the things that we learned that we could be doing, and so we're developing that concept right now, is the LMS that the state helped secure for the free LMS learning management system, that we happen to be the provider that supports that this year and next year for the state. It has the ability to have an embedded discussion board feature, which that's a modern tool that all of us are probably familiar with, but it's not near as risky at using it with parents to try to help engage them and grow them and help them find the ability to find their own solutions a little bit better. So we're going to actually take that concept and grow that out as a means of supporting digital learning, but through our parents and trying to grow some capacity there. So that's just one example of something that I wish I had thought of that last August, but I'm seeing, sometimes we think of things out of need, and that's kind of where we are. But realizing that if we want a better outcome, we're going to have to engage the adult that happens to be supporting that learning beyond our school system.
Hey, I think Adam Archer was going to speak up. Adam, did you have something you wanted to share?
I was just commenting on the question about what other schools are doing for filtering. We're, of course, we've got the the state Cisco on the state provided hotspots as a backup. We use GoGuardian. I love GoGuardian for the simplicity of wherever they use it, they're connected. And I know that there's kids who have tried to circumvent GoGuardian, and I'm sure there's some that have circumvented GoGuardian. But I was just throwing that out there. I've looked at pushing out the Cisco umbrella to the Chromebooks as well. And I hate doing that in too many extensions, and especially 2 filters, but there's some more flexibility with GoGuardian in that it can allow custom URLs. We've, as far as support goes, we've implemented a hotline. It's just a simple ring group on our VoIP system that rings all of our texts, phones, and we just kind of, the first one that gets to it for after hour stuff.
Adam, are you guys doing something in the arena of working with your parents on social media dangers and whatnot with the take-home devices, or any of you guys and gals out there? What are you doing besides GoGuardian? I mean, the tool is great, but are you having conversations? Are you communicating? Are you having trainings or webinars or whatnot?
Harrison has not had any formal trainings with parents, but we have had a few community Zoom sessions, and we've highlighted some of those risks and some things to watch out for.
I think it's, it's hard enough to reach the teacher to try to get, try to reach the classroom, but to even reach the home is this, it's always been an effort, but to try to reach it in this capacity and in the way that we're trying to reach it is definitely a challenge that I hadn't heard of GoGuardian Parent before. I'm kind of curious to know, like, I don't know if you'd speak up. Is that an app? I mean, even if you release something like that, I mean, how do you get that? How do you get that information down to the parent is one of the big questions I have for me. Like, how do we reach them? You have parents show up, how do we get all the way to the parent so that the devices that are come home, I know, like, for example, whenever we get a new staff member, a lot of you all will do kind of training before you give them a device, but we have so many parents. How do we even, we know that's like, how do we even meet that demand? But it's that kind of thing. Like, they need to make sure they know what they can and can't do, can't send, and just kind of what things I might be thinking about.
Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but the GoGuardian Parent is, everything is pulled from AppScan. So you have all the emails of the parents, and you have all of their telephone numbers. And the way that we pushed it out was through email and SMS, that it went either to their phone as a text, or they got an email saying that they now had control to be able to log in and see all their student stuff that they were doing. Isn't that how, am I not correct about that?
Yeah. Who made the post on GoGuardian Parent Teacher? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we used Apogee for our website, which pushes out to text, SMS, to email. We pushed out, GoGuardian actually just gives you a preset email already typed up. You just kind of customize it. It tells exactly how to pull the app and how to do it. The thing is, the Guardian email has to be correct in eSchool. And then after they fix that, the next day it'll update and be fixed. And we explained all that to them. We had several parents that started using it. We had a few calls, their email was wrong, and we got that fixed. So it seems to be, it's a great solution, and it was already part of our package. It wasn't an extra cost on GoGuardian. So when they turned it on, I saw it one day and I said, oh, that's cool. So we pushed it out across our website. Every type that we had, we pushed it out that way. Seems to work really good.
I think that's good info. I think you touched on something. You and I was trying to look at the chat. We're kind of hitting back and forth. I think at the end of the day, kids are always going to find a way around it. You know what I mean? And I think that's where technology can only get us so far. I think we have a certain responsibility as professionals. But at the same time, I think that's where and they're going to get around it. And that's where I think the parent education piece, it can't fix everything, right? So I think that's where the parent education is so important. Even letting the parents know, I make jokes about this whenever we security awareness training live, and I would be like, teachers really do think you text can protect them from everything. Like they think that if they're on your network, they don't have to worry about it because you're going to take care of it for them. They really do think that. And I think sometimes our parents assume that too when we send our devices home, that they really think that if they're on a school device, that there's no dangers out there when we hand them something and that we can protect them anything. And I just think it's an unfair assumption, but I definitely think it's one that they're making. And so I was just kind of curious to know. Those are all good though. I didn't know that a Go Guardian parent and it was even out there, even a part of the package. So I think that's pretty interesting. I was wondering, are y'all, that has definitely been the most popular. Is there anything else, or are there any other efforts that might be going on in the schools that you guys know of or heard about?
Yeah, who besides Go Guardian for student safety?
That's the one I always heard about.
Yeah. Oh, there are others that are out there, and if one of you speak up if you think of something differently, but if you guys want in the future for some of our digital defied discussions, we'd be more than happy to maybe have someone give us a 5-minute, 10-minute commercial on that. Of course, we'll limit them because we want the discussion to be about us and about what we're talking about. So if you guys want to email myself, Ray, or Mel, or any of the other group members about you'd like to hear that discussion, that's fine. We do that for the co-op tech directors. We bring in vendors who, number one, have been reputable and who are not just truck and ladder guys to share their products with us. There's no strings attached. And we'd be happy to do that if you guys think that's something we need to do on a larger scale.
And this may not be you all, but I would say the same thing. I mean, if you guys are interested in trying to do more around parent education, if you'll hit me up, I have a lot of contacts, whether it be the agencies or the Morgan Nick Foundation, or a long list of folks, whether it be Cassandra with our media specialist, or our family engagement folks. We're all pretty passionate about this topic. This falls on you, but you may be help us to connect to the right person in your districts to start having those conversations, because I think tech will get us so far. I think that's half the conversation. I think that is parent education, and if you want to kind of dabble more into that or kind of step into that, just holler at me. And
Mel, you want to move on?
Yeah,
Hey, real
Alan
quick.
in there though. Blocks.net. Alan, you want to talk about that?
It's called Bloxy, and it's an extension for Chrome, but it has, parent dashboard teacher. I mean, it's very similar to Go Guardian, and I used it before I went to Go Guardian. They work pretty close, but the problem with Bloxy, they kind of got a little pricey. But there again, they might have changed since then, but it's been a couple of years since I've dealt with them, but they're very similar.
So Dawn and I and Ray and others will do some planning for next time, but we may have enough expertise in our own little family right here of Arkansas, Dawn, that we can tap some of that and share out a short little snippet presentation. Some of you may have access to that as part of your Go Guardian package and just don't realize how to unleash that or harness it. And so sometimes leaning on each other helps us think that out, and it's never too late. It's never too late to learn that.
No doubt.
So Ray, did you have anything else before I go to the next slide? Did you want me to play the Lone Oak story?
no, you're good. They can watch it if they'd like. So we're good.
All right, Don.
All right, guys. Well, one of the good things that has come from the ESSER funds is that you can use those funds to purchase products like Go Guardian and Bloxy, and I think Impero, some of those other products that are meant to provide student safety measures and parent parent information measures. So as we're thinking about equal versus equitable, and I believe that way up the chat box, let's see, I think it was Adam Hand who asked a question. Let's see, I'm way down the list. sorry. Okay, no, it was Mountain Pine. Or is it MPS Mount Mina? Sorry, Mina. Sorry, guys. What's the definition of equitable bandwidth? It's a big question I've been getting a lot lately about what is equitable, and it's not just applied toward bandwidth. But when we think about equitable, think about what is reasonably possible. So that doesn't mean that it's equal and that it's the same and that everybody gets the same exact thing, because there are areas in your communities where no matter what you do, you can't get the same amount of connectivity for every single student. So you have to look at other options. So what can I do for student A as opposed to student B to maximize their learning opportunity, whether it be with a connectivity or a device? So start thinking of it in those terms. And it's not always fair. I mean, if you start thinking about what's fair, that's more about what's equal. So what may be a good solution for Ray may not be a good solution for Don, mainly because we're two different types of students. We have two different types of situations. We have two different environments. Ray may live 20 miles out the dirt road where Don lives more in the city. So it's not always going to be what's fair, but it's going to be what's reasonably equitable that you can provide that student a maximized learning opportunity to the best of your ability. That doesn't mean spending $1 million and building a tower to connect 4. It doesn't mean that at all. It means there are other options, and I'll give you an example. For example, Ray living down the dirt road who has no chance of getting a connection out there, he may need a device that has all the resources and tools installed on that device, so he can have access to educational resources at his fingertips, whereas I might be able to connect from my home synchronously to a teacher in the classroom or asynchronously throughout the day. So it's not always what's equal or fair. It's about what's reasonably possible. So ESSER's not asking you, or the ESSER funds are not requiring that we give everybody the same or everybody what's fair. It's doing what's equitable and what we can do for that individual student. For example, another example, some student with special needs may not be able to use just a standard Chromebook that you would spend $250 or $300 for. You might need to get that student a better device that can handle different types of software applications that might be more amenable to that student's needs. So when you're thinking in terms of equity, it has to be very individualized. You can give us all the same device, all the same software, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's equitable. And it's fair, but it's not as necessarily equitable. So when you're thinking about that, have your leadership teams thinking of it in terms of it's not a one size fits all approach. And it's different too by grade level. So, you have kindergarten students who aren't able to just take a Chromebook in a hotspot home and do their lessons. They may have motor skill things that they're still working on. So they may need a touch device, or they need a more robust device, or even an iPad type device or a tablet type device. So when you're looking at it, I know it's easy for us as tech coordinators. By gosh, I know I've been there, done that. That it's easy to purchase one device, one hotspot device package, and we're just going to either take it or leave it. Well, that's kind of not what they're asking us to do. ESSER folks, CARES Act money is saying, we're giving you money. We want you to make these learning opportunities as equitable for these kids as possible, as reasonably possible, so that they can still continue learning and not have as much learning. So I hope I've kind of explained that a little bit, or maybe even made it more muddy than what it was, but at least you kind of know where we stand on that. Another thing too, is you guys know that we have ESSER 3 funds. We're calling them ESSER 3. They may be called by everybody else. But ESSER 1 was about, we were in emergency mode. We need to keep school going. We need to keep learning going. ESSER 2 is about, what do we learn from ESSER 1 that we can do or improve or long-term? And then ESSER 3, 20% of that funding is going to be earmarked for capturing lost learning. We won't take 20% of those funds and do programs, help with emotional issues. And we want to make sure that we're taking consideration that not only did we have a really crazy year this past year, but we got an opportunity here to help these students that are in this window maybe capture some of that lost learning. It might be used for summer school options. It may be used for enhanced software packages for these kids. And not just the technology. Of course, we all think technology terms. There's just so much more that you can do with this bigger pool of money because it's equal to both ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 allotments. So is equal to A and B. So there you go. You're going to have a lot of money their way. You're going to have a lot of opportunity. We still want you thinking long term. Some of the big questions I get asked all the time is, can you give us a list of what we can and can't spend it on? Well, no, cannot. But what we are working on at the department with the leadership team and all the divisions and agency or groups under we're agency division under our division, sorry. We're trying to work on some guidance that will be helpful to you guys. We're trying to wrap that guidance up by tomorrow, and hopefully you'll see a commissioner's memo coming out in the next 2 or 3 days that will help you understand how those monies can be allocated. So I want you to think of it like this when you're thinking about ESSER 3 funds. And hopefully your super and principals and leadership teams are involving you guys. But think about it this way. Yes, you have a pool of money, big, wonderful pool of money. And we all know money sometimes causes more than solutions. By gosh, we've been dealing with it here. But there are things that you can do, and there are things that you should do. And so when you're thinking about spending that money, what should I spend that money on, as opposed to what could I spend that money on? Now, that's not to say don't spend it on some of those could do options. It's just say, I'm just telling you, as you're thinking about it, think about, number one, what's most important? Capturing student learning. That could be with technology, food services, building services, all these different things that can be involved in that. So think of it in those terms. Think of it in your justifications. How do I justify spending this money on this? Can I tie it back to student learning or lost learning or continuity of learning? So think of it in those terms. And some of you guys have already reached out to me from around the state, and you've said, hey, Don, we're thinking about doing this with the money. Well, at face value, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What do you really want to do here? And then they go in to explain to me what they're trying to do. For example, I'm trying to think of a good example. Teacher computers on their desktops. Well, if you have teachers who are teaching remote students part of the day and non-remote students part of the day, or they're creating lesson plans and doing all these things that apply to a hybrid model of learning, that's pretty easy to justify that teachers might need an upgraded computer to be able to do that. Enhanced audio video for some of those devices. If you're buying a better system that allows better productivity in creating online learning opportunities, that's another. It's endless. And so what they've done is they've given us kind of a really broad, super broad category of spending, and it's up to the schools to determine if they can justify that or not. So I want to say this, I'm saying all that to say this, we're not here to tell you yes or no. We're not going to say absolutely not or absolutely yes. We're going to try to guide you through the process. Back to what I said in one of my other meetings, we're trying to help you moderate risk. We don't want you having really, really high risk expenditures that we think you're going to get audited on. We want you to minimize that risk based on our experience and based on what we knew. So I've talked to our CFO or guy who's over all the finances, and that's what the recommendation is. He says, be careful when we tell schools what they can and can't spend money on. Let's advise them on justifying what they are spending the money on. So make sure you think of the justification, the documentation, and long-term, something that's sustainable. And I'll give you an example. This is the example I was trying to think of earlier. So how many of you guys have had, and you don't have to raise your hand or speak up, rhetorical question here. How many of you guys have had to ramp up your technology support because you were dealing with phone calls, you're getting them at nighttime, you're getting them in the morning before you go to work, and you're just overwhelmed? Every one of you could raise your hand on that. But if you think that right now you need to hire an additional technology staff member to help deal with some of these calls for online learning, and for those kids, like what the example Margie was saying, you can probably use, you heard me say probably, you can probably use those funds to help offset that person's salary. Now, no bonuses, period. It says no bonuses, black and white. BONU is out. No bonuses. But you may have teachers who are working above and beyond their normal contract. You can use some of those funds for that. You may need to buy a new DHCP server because the server you have to die or it's on its last leg, and you can't deliver IP addresses unless that server's functioning properly, and that services to internal school or even external if they're doing whatever, some creative logging in to use your school bandwidth. So there are a lot of options here. Infrastructure, is that supporting student learning? Yes. Is it something supporting teaching? Yes. Is it supporting all these different software packages you're implementing? Yes. So those are some things that you can think about when you think ESSER funding and spending. Any questions about ESSER at this point before I jump into the digital learning piece? That means I must have answered every question properly, Mel.
No, but you know what I'm thinking? Wait, I may be muted. No, I'm not.
You're
know what
not.
I'm thinking like if this group doesn't care, it would be really good to kind of capture some ideas from them. Then we could possibly poll a bigger audience next month. I think that would be really big. I think they're at the point they're still making decisions. Or we're telling them that there's a decision to be made. Sometimes we learn it like that, y'all, that you mean there's funding? Yes. Don's explaining to you, as long as you can tie it to supporting student learning or learning loss or whatever, and you have an ability to be able to sustain it, if it's a thing that needs to be sustainable, not a one-time lift. But I think it would be really interesting to be able to know from you guys, like, tell us the one thing that is burning in your district, and we understand that may not be the same across, and then we'd be able to put that together and share that out and poll our people next month on, you know, and us be able to know as a state what is the priority pots of need right now. I think that would be really big. It would also help us know how to better continue sessions with you guys and serve and support you.
Feel free to just type it over there in the chat box, something that's really a major concern for you.
Nobody's going to hold y'all to this. This is for you. Everything we're doing, and this is for you guys. But it'd be really good if y'all could throw just some topics in there that you're thinking about possibly supporting with the additional resources.
And Vernon, I'm not going to answer that one. You need to talk to someone a little higher above the food chain in that question you asked there. When you explain it like that, my answer would be probably not. It depends on how you justify it. And Jeff, that's a good point. Needs first. Got to meet the needs first.
Yeah.
Do you want me to touch on digital learning a little bit, Mel?
Yeah, we had a link in the PowerPoint, so I jumped out to the website. I didn't mean to do it too quick. But
no, that's great. That's great. You keeping me on track. So guys, as most of you know, schools are going to have an option for the next fall to offer a digital learning option or a digital learning program. It's not a free-for-all like it was this year. We gave a lot of flexibility this year. We had a lot of waivers that were given to us by the state board, but those waivers end at the end of this school year. So thinking forward and thinking next year, some schools are going to have really good plans for moving forward because they want to continue to offer a digital learning plan, whether it be using the Buzz and Lincoln learning options or Arkansas or all the other options that are out there. And those plans have to be turned in by May 1. This is the website that gives all the information. Co-op personnel have been trained. We did train the trainer, and your co-op folks had meetings for your schools. So I don't know who from your schools attended, whether it was a superintendent or an instructional facilitator or an assistant superintendent or principals. Those people were supposed to go to the training and learn how to meander the process or through the process of creating a digital learning plan. We worked on that for a few months trying to build this plan that would help us expedite the approval process, because anytime at school you're doing something that is in opposition of the state law, you have to get a waiver for it. For example, class size. There are laws that wrap around class size. Well, if you're doing an online learning option, you may be able to go a little bit higher than that class limit. Well, by law, you have to get permission to do that. And by law, that means you got to go to the State Board of Education and get waivers for that. So what we've tried to build is an expedited waiver process so that schools can fill out the necessary paperwork or online and apply for certain waivers, whether it be class size, attendance, and those kind of things that might, because for example, it's hard to take attendance in an online environment when kids are learning asynchronously. So you have to think of it and, you know, how flexible can we be? So if schools are going to ask for those waivers, they have to do that through an online application or a digital learning program application. Now, that doesn't mean we're doing away with AMI days. Schools still have full authority to ask and apply for AMI days, which are alternative methods of instruction, just like they have in the past. So if a school says, we're not doing this digital learning stuff, we're coming face-to-face next fall, we're going to deal with it on a case-by-case basis, we don't want a full program, we're just going to do AMI, totally fine. It's optional. Some schools are going to do both. They're going to apply for AMI days for those days where, you know, just a pipe bust in the school and we got to call school that day, but we don't want to have to make that day up later. We're going to have an AMI day. So we're going to pivot. But some schools may want to offer an option to kids where they can still learn remotely, asynchronously, or synchronously, or a combination of both. And they have to go through this process to be able to do that officially. So we worked through this whole process. We've got a guidebook for digital learning. And if they'll go through and work through all these pieces together, and my big ask from the technology aspect was for them to ask you guys to work with them. I know that sometimes a big wish that doesn't always get fulfilled. I can tell by looking at some of the faces, but we hope that they're working or letting you work with them on that decision-making process. This is we tried to expedite it and make it look simple, but what we also want to do too is instead of having every school that asks for waivers have to come to the state board and ask and present and then get waivers, what we want to do is be able to batch process them. So if we have 20 schools that apply for digital learning waivers, internally, we're going to review those. We're going to either give thumbs up or thumbs down on it. And a thumbs down means it goes back to the school and the co-op and they got to fix it. Thumbs up means we're going to run it to the school board. And instead of having to get the State Board of Education to approve every single one individually, we're going to say this 10 or this 12 or this 20, they've met all the criteria, they've met all the guidelines, they're ready for your approval. So then the State Board of Education members can give it thumbs up or thumbs down. They'll vote them in or vote them out by a blanket process to expedite that process. So that's kind of where we fall on the digital learning programming piece. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to shoot me an email. I've been dealing with that mostly out of the technology side from my team. Ray and myself and two other team members, we're the ones who are analyzing the technology component of that application. And we're going to review those components, and then we're going to give our thumbs up or thumbs down on whether those need to be worked on more or whether or not they're satisfactory and are ready to move to the approval process. So I said a lot, and this is usually about a 2-hour presentation, almost 3-hour presentation. I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version of what we've done and what we've built for digital learning.
Dawn,
Any questions? Yes, ma'am, Mel.
I just wanted to touch on when they pull up that playbook. I mean, all of it's relevant. I don't mean that it's not all relevant, but I wanted them to know there is a specific place in that strategic plan for districts, if they work through that planning device here, that talks about devices and connectivity. It's on page 26. Just wanted y'all to know that off of the department website in the playbook. Y'all have any questions about this? I mean, it's okay if this is the first time you're hearing this. We'd rather it be today than never, right, Dawn?
Yes, ma'am.
I know y'all, I know how, when I was a tech person, first of all, it was a long time ago, but I do know that I was so busy in the moment of support that often I wasn't part of this. I didn't know this was going on. And so we're just trying to bring y'all in case you're not in to the circle to know what's going on and can be going on if it's not in your district around the discussion of planning for digital needs for next year. And the main takeaway is go look at the playbooks if you haven't, and know that there is a deadline of May 1st on this.
And it's not a requirement. I mean, if your school chooses to not offer an option, they don't have. The other thing to say about that is if your school does apply and they are accept or receive approval for a digital learning option, let's say they get in the middle of the first 9 weeks or in the first 9 weeks next fall, and it's just falling apart and it's just not working. Have to continue doing that. They can say, hey, we're done with this. We're going full on face-to-face, everybody back on campus. And that's their out, that we've decided this is not working. We got to do this. And then they may have to find some other options for those kids and parents who just refuse to come back on campus. At the end of the day, the schools have local control over this. And I think that's kind of something that schools, some of your superintendents may forget, that they don't have to always ask for permission. Sometimes they just got to make the decision, and they might need our support in making that decision. But sometimes they just got to decide, it's just not working and we got to stop it before it gets worse. Or they might find something that's working great and we might want to replicate it with other schools.
Don, this is Bob. My superintendent called me right as we got started on this. Did you record it? Can I have it?
Yes, Trent is recording it and he'll edit all the things I said that were wrong.
Okay.
And then yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Don, I've advanced this to the vendor management.
okay, good. I'm in a daze here. I know we talk about a lot of stuff during this meeting, and I hope that it's good information for you guys. I hope that you're getting some good information and at least some people you can contact. And I think there was a question here. It said, David asked, do we have a DESE contact who can help answer Vernon's question? Yes, that would be Deb Kaufman's office, Public School Accountability, Deb Kaufman. And you can just go on ADE's website and find Deb's name under Public School Accountability. Her office answers, her team answers the hard questions. I get the softball questions. She gets the hard ones. So back on vendor management, something that we talked about a little bit last time when we met, and some of you guys didn't attend that session. We want to know from us, what are some, and at the beginning of the hour or hour and a half, we start talking about vendors just blowing up and vendors coming at us from all different angles. And that's not to say they're bad people. I deal with some vendors that I've been dealing with for over 20 years that I love and trust and know are going to take care of me. And they're not just a vendor, they're a partner. If I need things, they help out. And if they need things, I help out, and vice versa. And it's a good relationship. But what we've started seeing are the truck and ladder and the coming out of the woodworks guys. Are you guys getting beat up by a lot of that? Are you feeling, and I know your concern earlier, beat up by those folks that you feel like might be being a little less than honest, or you don't want to share some of your experiences? Feel free to speak up.
I'll throw one out there. You've probably all been getting these emails from all kinds of services out there, and it's even Newzella and some folks like that. They're going to find you can justify anything in your own mind. That's the end of it. So we really have to watch out what they're trying to sell us, because they're gonna find a way to justify it to you and your board and your superintendent, and it's going to look good to you, but it might not look good down the road when it comes up to the auditing at the end of all this, because there will be a price to be paid. So that's the biggest one for us. I'm getting a lot of that. Getting a lot of, well, we can get you extra money for buying Band-Aids, or something even ridiculous. We'll get you. You need to buy shovels. We'll get you extra money for it. That kind of thing. So that's our biggest deal. We're just kind of make sure we're immediately getting rid of that out of the loop there. Just want to throw that out there.
Good advice, Jeff. How about anybody else? And if you get beat up by a vendor that you know is being totally dishonest, let me know who they are. I want to know their name and their company so I can put them on the watch list. And I have called some vendors out lately. I've called them personally and said, cut the BS. I've had to do it.
Some that I've heard of, Dawn, would be vendor A selling a solution that sounds really, really good. And it's even almost too good to be true as affordability and sustainability, but they don't present the whole picture of how and who would manage it. And I think when you hear of a solution that sounds too good to be true, there's probably other pieces that aren't with it. that will fall into our shop to manage, I promise. And that's just one I want to put forward there that I've heard of a couple on that.
And the watch list is my just Anthony, just shoot me an email. And what I'll do is I give people heads up on sysadmin and stuff periodically. Another thing too, and I'm gonna watch Ray's face turn red when I do this. If a vendor tells you that their product automatically connects to eSchool or eFinance, you let them call me, because I have dealt with that crap more this year than ever before, when vendors have told people right out of the box, it connects directly to eSchool and you have no problems because we're a partner. And I'm telling you, I have lost my cool with some vendors over this, and I've called them and personally spoke to them and gave them the what for. And I don't mind doing that for you guys. But if they do that, you need to question them, because 99 times out of 100, that's a face lie.
We do have, not, as we do have the Triad API, which is one ROS compatible, is about half the price of Clever. If you want to know more about that, hit me up. But that's a real deal. The other one is not. So we can automate that or work with your vendors to automate that if you want that support. But yeah, anyways, just gonna throw that.
We dealt with it, and Ray is exactly right. So he's leveraged some opportunity with our product Triad to allow for some of those third-party products to add information with the DSA between the schools and us and everybody that's involved, to make sure that if you're rostering a product, that it can work a little bit better. I got to be careful because Kendall's giving me a little stink eye right now because he's had to deal with our headaches and pains. And but we do have some options. They're not perfect, and they're not going to be a one size fits all. It just depends on what you need and what solution they're offering. But I'll say this too: if we get word of a partner or a vendor saying they can do things, we want to vet them also before we let them connect to our systems. And the data that's in eSchool doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the schools. It's the school's information. So we're not just out willy-nilly giving out our student information system to just anybody. There are a lot of checks and balances that we as a government entity have to deal with that you as a school can circumvent in different ways. But we're trying to play friendly. In fact, one of my charges when I came on, and Ray hit me up first thing, my first day on job, I think, he said, man, we got to make it be easier for our school to have access to their information. And so we've worked really, really hard trying to do that. But we've also learned by trial and fire that it's not always easy to do. And there are a lot of hoops we have to jump through to make that happen. But we think we got a better solution than we had, and we hope in the future we have a better solution than we do now. And it's progressing.
Dawn, I popped something out there. I know some of you have developed your own and personalized your own needs assessment in our state, but we would love to kind of put together a collection of what we in Arkansas use, not what's out there on the internet when I search for it, in the context of technology and or digital learning that we could share as samples with each other. I think instead of reinventing the wheel, just sharing the wheel if you've got something. I know Dawn and I would help get it shared and put in a location where others could use it, and we will give you credit for your great work. But I feel like it would really help some of our more rural school districts to be able to see maybe what some of y'all are doing, and maybe some of our rural districts have a really great take on of what they're doing that we could share out with others. So just an opportunity.
And I know we're getting close to the end of our and I want to make you guys or remind you guys to mark April 20th. That's going to be our third segment of Diagnosing the Digital Divide. So mark your calendars for April the 20th, if you will. We'll send out a notice just like we have on this one. As Mel said, any resources that you guys can send us that we can share makes us all better and stronger. I hope that you guys are able to get hopefully some good information from us. I feel like the more I talk, the less you learn. It's better when you hear from each other. So we're going to try to push you guys to be more interactive in these, even if you don't like it, because I know you like to work behind the scenes and be left alone. But in this group, we want it to be kind of an open dialogue as much as possible. Of course, it's hard to do with 40 to 80 people, depending on how group R is. So yeah, we're going to help build that page and share out information. If you have privacy issues with student information, reach out to Ray. Anything APSRC, reach out to Mel, Kendall, or Trent. And anything they can't figure out, reach out to me and I'll find somebody who can. So Mel, I'm about ready. I'm ready to wrap up if you are. This has been, as usual, exciting for me to talk to everybody and see everybody and to know that we're all still in this great fight together and see us making progress.
Don, you may want to tell them, guys, we're putting our recordings out on both of our websites. There's the link that stands for Diagnosing the Digital Divide. The department has linked last month's, and then Ray's been really good to get this month's out there as well. As soon as we can build it and get it out there, we will. And we have it also on our website. But I think what we can do is we can build a common short list, and it can be living, Don, and we'll grow some resources that are quick that we can link out here with these two great bodies of work. So we're not doing double work.
Yeah.
We can do it once and share it twice. And so we'll own that piece between now and next month. And we really appreciate each of y'all taking your time and joining us. And any kind of suggestion, I'm going to process with what I chatted with Vernon and Jeff about with you guys to see about possibly what we might have as some content next month. But anything that you guys would like to bring forward that you think would be relevant for a greater good here, please reach out to us. We appreciate that.
And triple D is not how big I am. That's just something that Mel came up from Diagnosing Digital
That
Divide.
was our report card back in the day, Don, you and I.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Save the date is what? April 13th. Is that right?
April 20th.
April
Oh, thanks, Ray, for trying to throw him a curveball.
I was just trying to throw it out there. Save the date is what date?
The 20th. Man, Ray was trying to mess me up, wasn't he, Mel?
He is, and we're just trying to do something we can remember. At the same time, yeah, we're trying to get a routine established for us. Tune in on Tuesdays for tech stuff. Right.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thank you all so much.
Take care, guys.